Shaq Fu was released for the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo by Electronic Arts in 1994. Michael Jordan had retired the year before, and Shaquille O'Neal was already in the midst of being pushed as one of the NBA's next big young stars. He had endorsements out the ass. He tried his hand at hip-hop, which was horrible, tried his hand in acting, which was worse, and tried his hand at video game endorsement. Now, if someone had mentioned to you at the time that Shaq was going to be featured in a video game, the only genre you'd logically expect the game to be would be basketball, or maybe a street hoops game at the very least. Instead, we end up with a fighting game, which is certainly the next most fitting choice. I mean, everyone in the world recognized Shaq as a martial artist who founded Shaquito. Yeah, I didn't even make that up. That's actually from the game. The SNES version, for whatever reason, only has 7 characters compared to 12 on the Genesis, and also less stages. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of difference. The music is a little bit better on the Genesis. The SNES renditions sound more like unfinished demos, but the graphics and animation are a little sharper on the SNES. The character sprites are small, but well-defined and have pretty fluid animations, as does the detailed backgrounds. But the gameplay, that's another story altogether. The main culprit here are the controls. First off, positioning yourself is a problem. You walk slow, and jumping fucking sucks. You can't control the momentum of your jumps, nor can you change the direction or slow yourself down in midair, so you always travel the same distance every time you jump. All of this makes navigation a nightmare. On top of that, there's a delayed response with your commands, so combining these major issues just leads to a frustrating game of pin the tail on the donkey, but it's more like you're trying to stick the pin on an actual live donkey. Also, you got 2 types of punches and 2 types of kicks, one more powerful and one quicker. Not the most necessary scheme in the world, but it's worse on the Genesis because you only have 3 face buttons, so you have to press start to toggle whether you're doing the punch or kick lineup. It's tedious and disruptive, but I always stick with the kicks anyway. They have more reach, and the A button's function on the punch lineup is to taunt, which does absolutely fuck all, while the A button is a move boost and the kick functions, which enhances attacks or provides a shield for defense. The storyline they came up with eviscerates your brain with hilarious absurdity. Shaq is sightseeing in Tokyo, Japan prior to a basketball game for charity when he wanders into a kung fu dojo, since I guess he wants to showcase his Shaquito, or maybe he can't read Japanese and doesn't understand what the sign says. The old man behind the desk immediately proclaims Shaq as the chosen one to rescue the boy Nezu, presumably because Shaq is about 5 feet taller than anyone he's ever seen before. He has Shaq step into a quote-unquote portal that's located in the fucking storage closet out back, taking Shaq into the second world where he must rescue Nezu from Set, an ancient sorcerer who 1,000 years ago ruled the second world, and in an attempt to conquer Earth, overthrew the pharaoh of Egypt until a mutiny of wizards summoned him back to the second world in a comatose state in the form of a mummy, until his most loyal servant, Beast, managed to awaken him, but to regain his strength and continue his world conquest, he needs to perform a ritual on a descendant from the old pharaoh he murdered, so they kidnap Nezu and bring him to the second world. And Shaquille O'Neal, basketball superstar and apparent martial arts expert, who by chance is in Japan at the time all this shit is about to go down, wanders aimlessly into the worst-looking dojo to ever come out of Japan, which happens to double as a gateway into the next world where he can save the day just in the nick of time. Now that's ridiculous in and of itself, but that's just the premise. The way it develops throughout the course of the game adds to the absurdity and creates some confusion. Okay, so how it works is, you walk around the map and choose which opponent you want to face by accessing their location. After clearing everyone at the first level, a bridge will appear and you can move on to the next one. There's some pre- and post-match dialogue that caters to this story, and here's where everything goes from suck to blow. So the kid you're trying to rescue, Nezu, has a grandfather, Liatsu, who is one of the combatants in the first level. For no reason whatsoever, he tries to impede your progress. Why the hell is he fighting you? The cat chick, Corey, who you face off in the second level, is another one of the good guys and fights you because she's been forced to wear a mind control ring. And you also fight Nezu himself in the second level, who has been hypnotized. But no excuse has been made whatsoever for Liatsu to be fighting against you. By the way, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing any of these names right at all. Speaking of Corey and Nezu's mind control situation, here are some more potential plot holes. When you get to the second level, there are 3 fighters you can choose from, and Nezu and Corey are 2 of them. Since you can choose any of them you want in any order, you can face Nezu first, free him from his hypnotization, and then when you face Corey later, the dialogue suggests you're still looking for Nezu. And even if you do free Nezu afterwards, you're still going to fight Beast and Set later on, and they still talk as if Nezu is under their captive. What the hell is happening here? Well, for one thing, this only applies in the Genesis version, as the SNES version has less characters, and Nezu isn't one of them. He's just used as the damsel in distress, if you will. Also, the stage placement is different. Corey appears in the first level, so her encouragement to find Nezu would work even if Nezu was in the second level, which he's not. None of these inconsistencies exist in the SNES version because of this, so it's very likely that for the Genesis version, even though they had to tweak the maps to compensate for the additional characters, they just haphazardly implemented the same sequences without altering the dialogue at all. All they had to do was not include Nezu as an opponent, and it would have taken care of everything. But should we really be breaking our balls over the game's plot? I do have to admit that I do get a chuckle out of the game's ending where, after returning Nezu back to the first world, Shaq hurries to his charity game and finds Beast waiting to challenge him for some hoops. I also gotta say that I do like the game's roster too. I've read a lot of criticisms of the characters being too over the top, but can't you say that about any classic fighting game's lineup? I think the fact that the game was so horrible, the characters were guilty by association. The one thing I don't get for the life of me is Shaq's location. Every fighter has their own venue, kind of like Street Fighter 2. Shaq, the celebrity lead character of the whole game, doesn't even have one. He's defaulted to the fire pits of Beast, which makes sense, you know, Shaq fighting in hell. You'd think a basketball court would be a no-brainer, right? The other options in the game are a duel, which is just an exhibition with 2 players, or a gauntlet against the rest of the game's lineup with 1 player. And each character has their own endgame epilogue bit, which kind of serves as a mini story mode. And finally, there's tournament mode, which is an 8-person tournament you can set up. Shaq Fu is infamously bad, but does it deserve the reputation that it has? Does every copy of the game need to be destroyed, as one website suggested? Well, I don't know about that. It's really bad. It certainly has a case for the worst fighting game of the 16-bit era, and I dare you to come up with one that's worse. But it never drove me to the point of insanity where I had to destroy every single copy in existence. It's a shitty game. I don't recommend it at all. But there are more unplayable games. And that wraps up this edition of Aqualung's Game Reviews. See you next time.